They will then take 30 cents off the top, their 10%. They give me the remaining 90%. So that's a very good deal for me compared to some of the other wholesalers that I try to deal with. She wants 50% of it because, you know, standard markup is 100% for wholesale, right? The food bank is different. And so they have this consignment program. So you should check to see whether you have one here or wherever you're thinking about selling. Now the other advantage of it is that whatever is not sold, it goes to feed hungry people. So I win sort of no matter what. If I want to be the Los Angeles schmuck, then I can sit there and say, oh, and by the way, there's this magical little tax benefit to it as well. But primarily I'm happy because either I made money or a hungry person got to eat my lettuce. So it was kind of a win-win situation. So that was the backup for my farmers markets, was finding a food bank. And I believe that fits the mission of some of you guys. So that could be a real easy outlet. So again, think about your customers. Do you want large customers or small customers? Because they're going to interact with you differently. You're going to have to interact with them differently. Each one's going to have different requirements. Large guys, grocery stores, distributors, restaurants. When I say restaurants, that's going to be a chain restaurant like a P.F. Chang's or something national, McDonald's, Subway, stuff like that. Which, just to be very candid, I think you guys have a 0% probability of getting in with a McDonald's or Walmart unless you got some ace in the hole you're not revealing to us when you introduce yourself. Just throwing that out there. Small guys, the mom and pop grocers, the small restaurants, the farmers markets, the individuals, stuff like that. So again, think about the target customer that you have. The crop production is going to be different than beef. I'm just throwing that out there. Beef is a different market than vegetables. So as far as the large customers are concerned, here's some just thoughts. And again, this is all my perspective. Take it with a grain of salt. The large guys, they're kind of sensitive to error. Now, error being, oh, listen, I don't have 100 heads this week. I got 50. That's an error. Oh, by the way, there was bugs on it. Or, oh, by the way, I was late with my delivery. So different types of errors. Larger customers seem to be really sensitive to this. So it's like, hey, I said you need to be here at 6 a.m. so we can meet the truck going out. We're on a schedule here. You're late, therefore we're not paying. So again, they're very, very sensitive to this type of stuff. Generally, they're going to require insurance. So when I was sitting there approaching Whole Foods, hey, Whole Foods, you guys want to buy my lettuce? Absolutely. Just make sure you go get 2 million, 4 million additional insured coverage for our company. And then make sure you follow these things. And you're like, wait, how much insurance? And so just the requirements to do business with them, the additional insured, I had to have a food safety plan, which was already in place and then being measured by somebody. So I had to have been audited by an agency or one of the third-party agencies like Primus Gap or Global Gap or something like that. So the point being is they wanted just a lot of things from me business-wise just to even get in the door before we can talk about price. They're price sensitive because they're dealing with large volumes. So again, I'm trying to sell this person 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 units at a time. They're going to be price sensitive because they're buying so much from you. No, you're going to need to kick that down a couple cents because if we're going to buy 3,000 units from you, it needs to be at this price point instead. So they can get pretty sensitive to the price that you're proposing. Again, it's not going to be nearly as high as what you're getting at the farmer's market because again, they're wholesalers and distributors. As far as recognition is concerned, Arizona who? Yeah, they don't give you brand recognition whatsoever. So if that's important to you and you want to build your business, you may or may not achieve that in these types of scenarios. For example, I'm the premier lettuce provider to P.F. Chang's. Once it hits the salad plate, nobody knows who I am at all. So there's that branding that's going to get lost depending on the customer that you choose. Alternatively, they might brand the hell out of you. They might advertise your stuff like Whole Foods does with some of their producers, Gotham Greens or the Smith Family Farms, Sunzona, if you remember Sunzona. They got a lot of branding on these people, so it sort of depends on how they feel and what you're offering. They're guaranteeing the purchase, which is good because I can sell all 3,000 units at once and be done with my sales, as opposed to a smaller customer where I'm going around trying to hawk individual heads of lettuce one at a time or 12 at a time or something like that. That could be the one-stop shop customer where they take everything off your hands in a single sale and you're done. And there's things that are very beneficial about that. There's both terms that are good and bad. So for example, when you're doing this kind of stuff, you're going to be bound by a contract in general. And the contract will have terms in it. And the terms will be, hey, by the way, if you don't meet this demand that we have, we contracted for it, they will penalize you. And so that could be a financial penalty, that could be a production penalty, like, oh, we're not gonna buy all 3,000 units, we'll buy 1,000 now. Oh, and by the way, the price just went down or something like that. So there's negative and positive things. Oh, you're not willing to take all 3,000 units from me? Well, I'm sorry, the contract says you have to, and so therefore I get paid no matter whether you want or not. Throw it in the ditch, I don't care what it is, just give me my check. And so contracts can be both good and bad in these types of scenarios. Generally, you're gonna have to have a food safety plan, so GIPGAP, GHP, GAP. That's another program that's put on by the Arizona Department of Agriculture. Every state has a GIPGAP program, and it's related to every one of us, whether you're a crop producer, beef producer, cattle, goats, milk, apricots, whatever. There's a food safety plan out there, it's free. I'm sure Russ or somebody else can give you more information on it if you really want it. But that's a program you're going to need to participate in anyway, even if you go for the small people, because it's basically a cover your ass type scenario, which is, again, a completely separate discussion. But the food safety plan is very critical, and it becomes more and more critical as all these outbreaks occur. So it's going to be required of us one day. So just, it would behoove you to get into it just no matter what. You also have higher competition, finishing up the large guys. If you think about it, P.F. Chang's has about 25 different distributors that hit them up on a weekly basis trying to get their products in the line compared to some other person. So you've got a lot of competition when you're trying to get into the big guys. And a lot of it settles on production volume and price point. Can you meet this price point, and can you deliver the number of units that I'm requesting at a very given rate for an extended period of time? And that becomes challenging for the large guys. Now on the flip side, there's the small customers. And so again, those people are also sensitive to error. So for example, oh, I'm sorry, Larry, I wasn't able to make it in time to the farmer's market to bring you the lettuce for your sale. Well, Larry's market then just suffered, his stand, you as well. And so they're pretty pissed off at me now because I failed to meet their timeline. So again, it's sensitivity, but just in different ways. So everybody's sensitive, we're all sensitive. In general, your small guys at the farmers markets or the mom and pop restaurants or the small grocers, the mom and pop restaurants and the smaller guys, they generally won't require insurance of you. They probably don't have insurance. But the nice thing is they don't require it of you. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't have it or you shouldn't go ahead and do it on your own, because again, it's a CYA thing, cover your ass. But in general, they won't require it, which means that you can sort of get away at a lower operation cost. Is it a good idea? About that. Insurance is insurance. They will also be price sensitive too, so there's going to be similarities but differences. They're price sensitive because it's all about the bottom line for these people. So they're all about the 100% markup and things like that. So they're not going to try to chew you down on 5 cents here or there. They might try to chew you down on $1 or some larger amount. It is what it is. In terms of recognition and branding, the same type of problem. This could be a group of people who sit there and say, hey, could you just advertise my name? You're like, no, I'm trying to promote my own business. You're just some guy who hawks some lettuce at me. You don't want to advertise at all. Or alternatively, they will just brand the hell out of you. So I've had both experiences in my time. One issue is with the smaller markets is that it can be potentially very random purchases. How's the restaurant doing this week? Do you need 12 heads of lettuce or do you need 5? Because there's just been pandemic mode and nobody's coming in to eat this week. And so my sales can fluctuate greatly depending on all sorts of crazy market factors that I have absolutely no control over whatsoever. And so in that case, I'm like, man, I'm really glad I had that contract in place so I just get my sales and get the hell out. Because I might not have a guaranteed sale in the restaurants and the farmers markets. Again, they're going to be purchasing lower volumes, but they might be purchasing it from you at a higher price, which is kind of nice. And so again, there's this weird balance of volume versus price. And so that's why I asked you, do you want to be a large-scale producer or a small producer? Because that's going to sort of dictate where you go and what prices you're asking. The food safety plan is almost never required, but that's the same response. Who's heard of the GIPGAP program? Nobody. Who's heard of the GIPGAP program at the farmers market? They probably haven't either. So they're generally not going to require it because it's sort of something they don't know what they don't know. That doesn't mean that, like the insurance, that you shouldn't do it anyway. So I would highly encourage insurance and food safety plans, even if it's not required. Again, I spoke about the story. That's what a lot of these people are buying, is the story. That's what they're selling at these small venues is, I grew it, and my friend grew it, and it came from out there, and oh look, there's a little goat outside too, and it's a big family farm. Really, I mean, you're selling the story. You're selling a good product at a good price that's fresh and all those kinds of metrics. But they're also buying the story because they want to support local. They want to see the face that grew all these things, right? Lastly, you generally have more customers that you have to sell to make the same amount of money. Again, I can sell all 3,000 units to Cisco in a single shot and be done for the day, or I have to sit there and divide up that 3,000 units by what, like 25, 30, 40, 50, 100 different customers. So it's just a different type of customer acquisition and different volumes that you have to make in terms of sales. Which again, if you're a seller, hey, that's no problem. But if you're like me, it's like, man, this is just torture, just trying to sell stuff. So again, I leave you that option. So, thinking about some disadvantages to wholesale. Well, I get less notoriety. Who is the Arizona Vegetable Company? And I've had this problem. It's like, I've got a friend who sells lettuce, and he gives it to me. It's like, no, I'm not your friend. I'm not your buddy. I'm the Arizona Vegetable Company. This is a business. And I wasn't getting the notoriety that I needed. And so, nobody knew who I was. I don't get the feedback. I don't get to see all the people buying the lettuce and hearing, that was the greatest salad I've ever had in my life. Or, that was the worst salad I've ever had in my life. Or, why don't you grow this? Like, I don't have that pulse on the market to understand how my products are being received from the general public, the end user. And that's pretty valuable. That could steer me in one direction or another in terms of my production, right? I get less revenue, right? Because I'm wholesaling instead of retailing. But again, that goes back to the sales volumes that I could possibly be achieving. I might be able to sell just as much wholesaling as I do retailing, vice versa. And it's less fun. I like sitting in the markets person. I get to sit there and like ogle all the people walking around. But there are advantages to it. Okay, one sale and I'm out. I'm back in bed in 30 minutes. It's great. I get my Saturday and Sunday mornings back because I'm done. I drop off the stuff at the market. I collect my money. It's not my problem anymore. It's not on consignment. It's up to you guys to sell the product. I'm out. Okay, cool. Again, I get 1 to 2 transactions versus me sitting there at the stand hawking $2 a head 100 different times to get my 200 bucks. Okay? Really quick turnover. I don't have to sit at the market and be responsible for the stand itself or watch my employees. My employee cost is lower. So there's some definite advantages to not doing this. And again, I get to have my Saturday back, so that's kind of a nice thing. The disadvantages to retail, well, it's slower, like I said. I mean, you're just going to be sitting there hawking 1 head of lettuce or 1 piece of beef or 1 flour at a time. And it can get pretty monotonous over time if it takes you 4 or 5 hours to make 100 bucks. That can get pretty demoralizing very quick. There's also a sales process, which I've experienced. So some of us are growing things that are very easy. What do you do with beef? Make a steak, make a burger, do something like that. I've had people say, I don't know what to do with this. Lettuce? Really? You don't know what to do with lettuce? Make a sandwich, make a salad, eat some soup, throw it in a car, feed to it, like give it to the goat, whatever. I don't understand it. So I literally had to sit there and come up with a recipe card and say, okay, so this thing's called lettuce. Chop it up, the thing in the burger between the McDonald's patties. And it's an actual sales process. And that was lettuce. So if you guys are thinking about doing something crazy like kohlrabi or any of these weird, mustard greens and stuff like that, be prepared that there's going to be a sales process in it. It's like, I know it looks cool, you know it looks cool, but nobody else knows how to use it. They don't know which end is up. So there's a lot of sales processes that go into this stuff so that people know how to use your product. Again, there's the time commitment. You're in there for at least 6 hours, if not 7, 8, or 9, depending on the type of market, what time you start, where it is. If I'm trying to service a market up here in Florence from Tucson, I gotta get up at like 4 a.m. to sit there and do that. Is it worth it? I don't know. I used to do Oro Valley, and that was mostly worth it. Man, I was getting up early to service that market. But on the flip side, I make more money. It's fun. I get to interact with my customers. I get brand recognition. People know who I am. Oh, there's that schmuck who grew the lettuce over there. Yeah, they might not know my name, but they know that there's the guy that does the lettuce stuff. And when they want the lettuce stuff, they're looking for the guy wearing the shirt with Or is it the attic still? Okay. So now, when you're doing your operation, you're thinking about all this kind of stuff. There's things you can derive from your operation as you go, which is what I did, which is how I came to where I want to sell, what price point I want to use, stuff like that. So these are all things that should be generally available to you guys, which you may or may not be paying attention to, but will dictate your package. My direct variable costs, so things, again, crop production. So I'm in lettuce production. So I got seeds, substrate, fertilizer, things like that. If it's growing cows, you got, alfalfa and water and other types of inputs that go into the cow. There's the indirect stuff like the heating, the electricity, the labor, all that other kind of stuff that goes in. All things that I can monitor. I know how much fertilizer I'm using, how much my seed is. I can look at all the receipts, all that kind of stuff, right? So I can come up with an approximate cost per plant that I know I need to make up no matter what, whether it's wholesale or retail. I know I have to make this much money to break even. Okay? And so that's what I did. Again, this is crop production, so the numbers are irrelevant, but just to show you that I figured out it cost me about 3 cents per plant for my fertilizer. It cost me about 35 cents per plant for my labor. And then it cost me approximately 12 cents for my seed and my substrate. And so now I've got this idea of at least the minimum selling price that I need to make. Because otherwise, I encountered this with the wine industry. A bunch of folks came out from Wilcox who have all the new wineries going up. Oh, we're here from the winery, we got XYZ winery. Oh, that's cool. How do you sell your wine? And they're like, well, yeah, it's like 30 bucks a bottle. And it's like, well, how much does it cost you to produce? And they're like, I don't know. It's like, well, what do you mean you don't know? It's like, I don't know. It's like, well, how do you set your price? And they're like, it's like, well, are you making money? Are you not making money? Are you losing the shirt off your back? So, monitoring these things are super critical because for all I know, I'm selling, 50 cents a head for lettuce because that's what it is in Safeway, right? 50 cents a head. Well, I'm already losing money at 50 cents a head, so it's really critical to identify some of this stuff. And I realize that we're sort of going off the marketing part, but it plays into it. Why is your product so good? It's local. It's fresh. It was grown by me. Oh, and it's lower priced than what you can get at the competitors. That's also a marketing tactic. How did I figure out what I'm going to sell? Well, I'm a plant scientist, so if you sat there and said, I want you to grow a plant, tell me what it is. I'll grow all plants whatsoever because I love plants. That's the inherent problem, is that I'm going to try to grow everything. I love iceberg lettuce, so I'm going to try to grow iceberg lettuce. Well, in my quest to figure out what to grow, I didn't know how much things would cost when they're selling. So the first thing I did was I begged and pleaded with my friend who owned a restaurant. And I said, can I please have the price sheet that you're paying for all the other produce that you're getting for your restaurant from Cisco or Ron's or Stearns or Willie Ituli or whoever? Get the price list. And then you can sit there and see the competition that you have to either meet or beat to get the business with people. The other one too is I sat there and I was like, all right, well, they always warn you at Eller Business School, they said, don't put animation in your PowerPoints. So I sat there and I said, all right, well, which do I want to sell? I can grow all these lettuces, but does it make sense to grow iceberg? Well, if you look at iceberg in the green, that's 80 cents a piece. And so I can't compete with California and Mexico and places like that. And so it's like, 8 cents? Yeah, I think I'm going to lose my shirt if I do that one. All right, what about that living butter lettuce? Wow, $29.50 per case of 12? I think I can do that one. So that ends up being about $2.50 per unit is what they're selling it at. And if you look back at my cost, I'm growing it at about 50 cents per plant. So somewhere between 50 cents and $2.50, which is what they're selling it at, leaves me a lot of room for play to jack up my price and make money, right? So I basically went through and I tried to find all the high-value products that were locally being sold because, one, I know there is a market for them because someone's buying it somewhere. So I know someone's going to hopefully buy my stuff. And then two is, how much are they going to cost? Am I going to get enough money? Bull's blood. So when you guys go to your favorite frou-frou restaurant and you get the salad or the plate and they got that little sprig of breadcrumb on the top of it, that's bull's blood. And it's basically baby beets, little tiny sprinkle of something. Bull's blood sells for $50 a pound. And so you're like, whoa, 50 bucks a pound? Them's hemp prices right there. I'm going into bull's blood production. Well, what you quickly figure out is that it's an accessory, and they're only buying half a pound from you at a time. And so even though it's the highest priced item, it's going to be one of these low volume ones. So don't be tricked by like, oh, there it is, that's the gold plate winner right there. You might be deceived when you go to see it. So go find a price list. That will very quickly help you identify where you have to play. And again, you know, in science, they always sit there and say a negative result is not always a negative result. Like if you learn something's not a good idea, that can be a very positive thing. You might sit there and figure out that after all your production costs, you can't meet the price. Don't go into business, right? So this will sort of help you steer as a roadmap, whether it's even a good idea to get into this business or not. Labor, I monitor my labor. In this case, it was a small operation. There's only 4 of us. And so we spread it out. So I was monitoring their timesheets every week. And we figured out it was about 1.5 people to sit there and accomplish the work. But then again, there was the seasonality of it, which becomes a problem for my employees. So in the middle of December and February during the winter, my hourly requirements drop. And so therefore, it's really hard to keep my people employed. Well, they still have to pay their electric bill and the lights and eat and stuff like that. So how do I balance that kind of thing going on? Which I haven't figured out the magic yet. But that's something that really did occur, is that there's these troughs in production. This also goes to help me set my price, whether it's an even price throughout the year or whether it fluctuates based upon my labor availability. That's my slide. I monitor my energy. So go outside, look at your electric meter, see how much energy is being consumed by your operation. Again, I'm in a greenhouse, so that's slightly different, but if you're using, you know, a pressure washer or a water pump or your well water or something like that, somewhere there's electricity being consumed within your operation. So you just want to make sure you identify all the inputs that go into it, because that's, again, part of this cost that you're eventually contending. Back to the transportation costs. When I mapped everything out, I figured out that it was costing me somewhere between 20 and 28 cents per plant. And so again, I sat there and decided, okay, I want to service this market, but not that market. It's too far away. At 28 cents, it doesn't make a difference. Oh, and by the way, minimum wage just went up. So now it's 12 something an hour. It's going to be 13 something an hour, then 14 something an hour. And so that's going to also drive up my cost, because not only is it, you know, gas and miles on my truck, but it's also time that my employee has to sit there in the car driving it around. So my transportation is going way up. And so I've been keeping a very close eye on that one as well. Sometimes you need to make a case. So again, you're thinking about marketing and branding and all this kind of stuff. Why are you showing us all these numbers? Well, this is also part of my marketing and branding plan, is that when I go up and sit there and try to sell my products to somebody, well, why should we buy your products at our restaurant? Well, I'm local, it's me growing it, I keep all my money within Tucson, so I'm supporting the community. So I'm really trying to build a complete picture, both with the intangibles of here's some beautiful lettuce, and here's the smiling face that grew it, to some numerical stuff as well, saying, hey, by the way, these are also some real reasons why you want to use our stuff. It's cheaper, it's better, it's faster, we're supportive of the community, stuff like that. So again, a complete picture. We did a test trial. So this was the first farmers market I did back in graduate school. On the right, back left, he works for Driscoll's, or he used to work for Driscoll's. I wouldn't recommend Butthead and Lurch being your guys to sell at the farmers market. You need to add some softer faces to things. This is not the group of people you want to buy produce from. But barring the gruesome twosome up there, you can sort of see things that we did, which was we literally busted out the crayons and the markers and the highlighters and the note cards and stuff like that, because again, they're buying the story. Oh, look, it's 2 guys in college and they're trying to pay for their tuition. So there's like story built into it, right? But I'm identifying, you know, what the product is. I'm showing how it's grown, right? Because that's important to some people. How do you grow it? What kind of fertilizer are you using? Can you tell me about your seeds, stuff like that? I'm identifying fresh. It came from less than a mile away. All the big things. Hydroponic, which I wouldn't advertise hydroponic. But, you know, pesticide-free, local, grown by me, all that kind of stuff. And just like stick it in their face. we're not doing business. That's just, we figured out that nobody was doing business with us because the two of us was kind of like, and so we invited Emily and Chad to come over and pretend like they were shopping. But anyway, adding some girls to the mix, those guys out there, that probably is helpful in our sales. And if nothing else, call your friends over so it looks busy. Because nothing's worse than just sitting there just kind of with your hands in your pockets, like looking real desperate, like, hey, do you want to buy some? I'm from LA. It's like, this is all about Hollywood. It's all a show, right? But again, I'm advertising the big selling points. You heard me sit there and knock organic. I hate the word organic. I don't believe in organic. That's could get me pelted from somebody out here, but I think it's not the branding tool I want to use. When I'm selling lettuce to somebody, so I'm you now, you come up to me and you say, "Oh, that's some really beautiful lettuce. Is it organic?" And I'm like, "No, it's not organic." Because again, by the way, if you say it's organic but it's not organic, that's some time in Club Fed. That's a federal problem you just created, right? I'm sorry, man, it's not organic. So she goes, yeah, blow it at you. Wait, but it's pesticide free. Oh, pesticide free? Okay. 95% of the time, pesticide free gets them back when they're looking for organic. And then there's going to be about 5 or 10% of the people who sit there and say, I don't care what you say, it could be labeled in gold, I don't want it, it's not organic or bust. And you say, fine, I can't capture those people anyway. But the other 90-something% I can get back with these other buzzwords like pesticide free. And again, I almost never advertise as hydroponic because it's just got such a negative connotation in it right now. So, whatever that's worth. It's not really branding, but when I'm going through all the trouble of figuring out my expenses and things like that, it's also just sort of nice to model my operation and make sure that it looks like what I think it's about to do. So I'm like, hey, cool, this is how much it's going to cost me to produce all these things. Is it actually going to match what I'm really able to lay out? So just consider modeling your operation a little bit. Big one though is, when you're trying to choose where to play, what kind of business you want to be, I think you should ask this question yourself. So if you say, hey look, I got 2 forks in the road, 2 roads and a yellow wood diverge, and how sorry I was that I could not take both. If I took my retail revenue, right, so that's me sitting there at the farmer's market, if I took that amount of money, the $3 per head that I could sell the lettuce at, and you subtract out my guy Sean's time, the market fee that I had to pay, however I value my time, fees, all that kind of stuff. What if that amount of money was equal to the same amount of money that I could get wholesaling? So in other words, I can sit at the market for 6 hours and sell to everybody. Or I can show up for 5 minutes in the morning, drop it off to my wholesale friend, and then be done. And I got the same amount of money. What do you do? Which one do you choose? And so that to me was kind of where it gets into the value of your marketing. It's how much is it worth to sit there and see the facial expressions off people, or to interact with them, or to talk with them, or how much is your time worth? Like, he wants to be back in bed sleeping right now. It's early, right? So what's the value of all that kind of stuff? And so that's an important question I ask myself every time I think about going back into the farmer's market. Keep it simple. One thing I'm super guilty of is pulling trigger in Arizona, so everything's my guns, right? Pull the trigger being, I can sit there and infinitely plan stuff on Excel. I'm really good with Excel. I love Excel. And so I can plan things just to the nth degree. But the problem is that I plan it too much and I don't pull the trigger and just execute. And there's a lot to be said for just executing and learning with your feet on the ground running, as opposed to trying to have it picture perfect before you start your operation. So somewhere in the middle of having no planning, too much planning, is the execution. That's what I think you should keep your eye on. Always have backups. Backups, whether it's employees, whether it's equipment, whether it's records. Just you're going to need backups in all different aspects of your production lifetime. I know I have. Again, my records get wet, I have a backup set. My employee called in sick, I got someone else I can call. My products didn't end up being that great, I've got a set in the freezer that I can pull out. So just, it's a Murphy's Law type thing, is I guess what I'm trying to say to you guys. If you build it, they will come. And that's amongst the pest problems that I often have is So now I capture them, and then I enslave all the scorpions. That's a melon I grew, not one that I smoked. Okay, just put that out there. What can I answer for you guys? Again, this is all from the perspective of a hydroponic crop producer, small market in Pima County. And while I haven't been the greatest in the world, I've outlived a lot of my competition. So there's something to be said about that as well. I live to die another day, like James Bond would say. Questions? I did really good and nobody has any questions, or did so bad that nobody wants to just waste their breath?
I want to know what your definition of what organic is and why you don't like.
Sure.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, organic is something that's defined by the USDA. There's debates right now about what's considered organic, and so that's sort of where I lose it, is that some inputs are considered organic, some are not. So generally, if it's a manufactured product, that's not considered organic, whereas if it's mined out of the earth naturally or derived naturally from, like, manure or something like that, that's considered organic. I just had a hard time with some of it where there's certain products that I can mine out of the earth that are naturally in that form that are not considered organic, and you're just like, look, I ripped it out of the ground, how can that not be organic? But it doesn't make whatever the list is.
Yeah.
So it's stuff like that, and then the fact that it changes all the time, and it's based on opinion. So the USDA just had a board recently in the last couple of years where they were trying to debate whether hydroponics could be considered organic or not. And there's just it's like Republicans and Democrats. It's just like two people just refusing to come to the middle of the room. And you sit there and say, hey, look, here's two groups of really smart people that can't come to a consensus on this. So until somebody does,
Yeah.
I'm just going for a product that looks good, is pesticide free. Yeah, the organic thing is just,
Yeah.
it really sells for some people, it doesn't work for some other people. Yes.
Is it possible for your type of growing and stuff to do it on a smaller scale? Like, say, you just want to do it like at a local, like maybe you want to sell at the local farm market, just in your city or whatever, in your little town, or just for yourself and your friends to grow. Are you able to do that? Is it feasible, or is it just so over the top costly that?
No, I think it's very feasible.
It's going?
No, I think it's very feasible to do it. It's just you have to recognize that you're not going to make $1 million.
Yeah.
So if you sat there and said, I want to have one market and I want to make somewhere between $20, $30, $40, $50,000 off what you grow in your backyard for the local market, I think that's very achievable.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know there's like math, and I'm like, I wonder if you can do that on a little small scale, and it would still be feasible to where it was, not so much profitable, but just, so you're not way over here.
No, so there's I can think of a family farm in Tucson. I'm not going to say their name because somebody here undoubtedly knows them, but they have approximately 1 acre of land in Marana, and they do cut leafy greens, and they pick up some tomatoes here and there from the University of Arizona. They sell at the farmers market, and they do 2 or 3 farmers markets, and they're very, very successful at it. They're making somewhere in that range of $20,000 to $50,000 or something to that effect, and it's their full-time gig. So yeah, it's very achievable. It's just it's a full-time job. I'm not going to lie. That's a kind of interesting thing about plants is plants don't take weekends, vacations, or holidays, and so it can really quickly become a 365-day event for you. So that's a big downside.
It's kind of like, livestock, eating animals, your dog doesn't take.
Yeah, got to feed my goats every day. Right, take them for a walk. Yeah.
I'm sure you're familiar with doing aquaponics, or hydroponics, which you're familiar with aquaponics. What the reason you chose hydroponics over aquaponics?
So aquaponics versus hydroponics. Aquaponics is going to be involving using fish as your nutrient source. So the fish waste is going to be coming out and serve as a fertilizer, as opposed to hydroponics, which is going to be a chemical-based fertilizer. I say chemical sounds real bad, but that's what it is, chemicals. With aquaponics, it's a highly intensive method of production. So now you've got plants plus fish. And so I've got 2 different conditions that I have to achieve for the fish. So the fish like a higher pH, and they like lower chemical content, things of that nature. My plants happen to really enjoy ions, so they want to jack it up a little bit. They like a lower pH. So there's this kind of weird balance in between that's difficult to achieve. The other one is just, it's really expensive. And so a lot of people say, well, I'm going to grow fish and I'm going to grow plants. And it's going to be this like Disneyland picture of sustainability and everything's going to be communicating with each other. It doesn't work like that because a lot of people say, oh, cool, look, Jaws is swimming around in there. It's time to harvest Jaws, the tilapia. Well, the second you take out the fish, you sacrifice your fertilizer production. So now your plant production is going to be down. So every time I get this question, it's, okay, well, what are you doing it for? Do you want to grow the plants or do you want to grow the fish? If you want to grow the plants, don't touch the fish. You can't ever touch the fish. If you want to grow for the fish and grow tilapia or shrimp or whatever it is, set up an aquaculture system and just do the fish by itself. And so it's just, you've never found a commercial operation above like, half an acre or something like that that's really big. Eventually they all just go down. And it's expense and complexity. One of the really neat things about my production systems, and with hydroponics, there's gutter systems, there's the floating ones, there's what you see with the tomatoes, with the top drip and all that kind of stuff. Each one, like all these wholesale versus retail, they all have different advantages and disadvantages. With my lettuce ponds, if the power goes out and everything goes awry, call someone who cares. Because my lettuce is floating on the water, I've got at least a week, maybe 2 weeks to deal with that issue. In the event that I have fish or an aquaponic system or something like that, or alternatively I've got an NFT system, I've got minutes to sit there and address the problem. So if all of a sudden the water gets real hot, dissolved oxygen goes down the tube, the fish die within 5, 10, 15 minutes. And so it's just, there's a lot of inputs to the labor. What else?
So what sort of pests do you deal with in a greenhouse?
Everything. No, primarily it's crop dependent. So with lettuces and tomatoes, I'll just generalize with that. With leafy greens, I typically get aphids, thrips, I'll get white flies, and then I get a whole bunch of root pathogens and things like that. With the tomatoes, I'm typically getting spider mites, russet mites, aphids, white flies, little shore flies, fungus gnats, but those are just sort of options. But the big ones are the white flies and aphids.
And how do you deal with them without pesticide?
Well, the easiest thing I can tell you is don't give tours. But wait, you just told us to brand ourselves. Don't give tours, like have a window that people can peek through or something like that. The biggest thing we can do is exclude. And so that means nobody comes in the greenhouse, nobody goes on the farm, nobody comes in and contaminates stuff. So exclusion's the big one. Outside of that, there's beneficial insects. So if you think about the beauty of nature, ladybugs and all that kind of stuff, you can let ladybugs go. There's a whole bunch of parasitic wasps and things of that nature that go around. So anyone ever see the movie Aliens? Alien, yes. Right? The big alien comes around and then the thing pops out of the chest. It's kind of one of those deals with the parasitic wasps. They go around and they'll just parasitize aphids and stuff like that.
So you're turning over so quick that your pests don't damage your crops.
Effectively, yeah.
Okay.
And then, when it gets down to it, I'm not going to lie, we use chemicals. Sometimes you have to use chemicals. The beauty of the chemicals is that, one, it's chemistry, so it's really well defined. It's not this like biological control thing. So there's really harsh chemistries, there's neutral chemistries, there's the lightweight ones. So you have an arsenal to choose from when you're using your chemicals. And so, for example, I might sit there and say, well, exclusion didn't work. The beneficials aren't doing their job. I'm going to move up to my stage 1 chemical, which is neem oil, which you can pretty much drink this stuff. Don't drink it. But the point being is that I can go from stage 1 to stage 2, 3, 4, and I can get some fairly natural chemicals, so like DT would be an option, the oils, stuff like that. So you can use the soaps. So you can use stuff that's not nearly as toxic as like kelthane or orthene. Are you indoors or outdoors? So yeah, you're looking for beneficial insects, hopefully, maybe. And then other than that, you look at the chemicals.
That wind we had the other day, blew it all away.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a, that's why we love controlled environment agriculture. It's 365. I can't remember who made the off-season comment, but when everything starts going out of production, that's when I come into production. So I'm basically riding the trough, which is another beautiful thing. So I do off-season strawberry production. I can do transplant production in the middle of the winter, all that other kind of stuff. But yeah, the field really just kills me. I'm from LA, where it's just like you throw seeds at the ground and like food shoots out of the earth. And here it doesn't work like that at all. So, what else?
Thanks. Why don't we, you're going to be around a little bit longer
Yeah.
while we do that. And let's give Myles a hand. And yeah, Myles.